futility is sort of associated with pointlessness, and to me, I think Wilfred Owen is suggesting the pointlessness of war, why there should be human suffering, and these young men that didn't realise the enormity of what they were going to do, what was going to happen when they went to war, and the atrocities that they saw when they actually were in the thick of war.
I totally agree. I think basically the whole message of this poem, and actually Wilfred Owen's other poetry about World War I, is summed up in the title, The Futility of War.
And also, I like actually the shortness of the title as well. It suggests the shortness of life. For these young men that joined up, didn't realise that war, they were told initially that it would last 4 months, instead it lasted 4 long, dreary years. And I think that highlights how they went to war thinking they'd be back home, and that really didn't affect them.
I think as well the short process that people should have to go to get to the idea that it is completely pointless, rather than spending all this time trying to work out actually, yeah, there was no point to that.
I think as well, like adding on to that, Jen, is this idea that futility isn't mentioned again, the word isn't in there, but he's introduced it, and then it's a description of futility. It's a snapshot to represent that. If you go over the story of the poem, what it's actually telling us about, it seems that a young soldier basically is not woken up one morning. It states usually that the sun woke him up, always it woke him even in France. So the suggestion is that he's not from there, he's now in France. And his the other soldiers, his friends, are trying to wake him, and it's not working. So clearly he's died during the night from the cold, from the conditions in the trenches at that time.
Well, in the because there was trench warfare, which links on to your idea, Emily, they had to live in these trenches, eat in these trenches, they got trench foot, they got trench fever, so it shows the difficulty that these young men had to go through on a regular basis throughout the war for 4 years of their life. And basically it shows as well that it was a very, very cruel place to be in, living in these trenches all the time, and there's no way of getting out of the army.
I think it's interesting as well that it's not described as somebody killing this person, but actually the conditions that he was in that's caused his death, which just highlights again the title of the poem, the futility of it all.
I think that the first line that strikes me, if we're talking about language in this poem, is this metaphor in the third line, the fields half sown. I think to me that represents that he had a life somewhere else, you know, his role on, we assume, a farm, and his life is now cut short. His fields half sown, everything that he's done he's had half a life. Nothing's completed.
Could it also suggest as well how he's rushed into war? Maybe he's in haste to get there, he's lost his life as well.
So again, linking to the title futility, you know, he's rushed, and that was pointless.
I suppose linking into with the nature of that line, you could also look as well at lines with the kind old sun, where the sun is personified as a person who's kind, old because the sun has been with us for many, many years. Will now, so it suggests that the sun is knowledgeable, knows more than us, where in the past he would have been able to wake this young man up from his sleep, but no matter what his friends, his comrades try to do, that he can't get him up no matter what they're trying to do, because he's died of the conditions that he's lived in these trenches, and the cold has got to him.
So again, the sun's role in giving life and waking him has become futile as well. So it's unable to do its job.
Even nature's unable to wake him. I think for me, the fact that they never tell you who this person is, it's just him. Is it a reference to one person that Wilfred Owen has come across, or is it a reference to all soldiers who were killed in these conditions or damaged generally by the conditions of war? So it kind of just highlights that there isn't just one person that was damaged in this way, that there was many, many people that were hurt and damaged by it.
I think linking into that, this idea of this soldier almost representing the universal representing multitude, is in the second stanza there's a couple of references to clay. So, once the clays of a cold star, was it for this the clay grew tall? To me, that's an allusion to Adam being created. So it's almost questioning, why was man created? Why was anyone created? If this is the
ultimate,
exactly, if this is the end, if this is how we treat life so casually.
So he's suggesting about nature, human nature, that we treat it so casually, therefore we destroy it.
Yeah, I think so. I think in this second stanza, there is a slight shift. It changes from a description of the scene to actually questioning reality, asking these bigger questions about, what is life for, and questioning the morality of war and how we treat each other.
So perhaps not just the futility of war, but the futility of life, if this is what we're choosing to do with it.
Yeah, I think so. And summed up in the last line, Owen made fatuous sunbeams toil to break earth's sleep at all. What is the point of anything if
you can destroy it?
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
I suppose the first thing that I noticed about the structure is sort of the change in tone throughout the piece, the fact that it starts with very practical ideas, move him into the sun, gently to touch awoke him, so it's practical things that are happening, and then kind of moves into sort of philosophical questioning and becomes quite bitter at the end, saying, what's the point in any of this? So it's kind of reflecting his thought process throughout the war of, right, we need to do this, this and this, and then moves into, well, why are we having to do this? And this is really terrible and completely pointless, so it's reflecting his thought process.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's further emphasised by the first line in the first stanza and the first line in the second stanza, using this imperative. It starts off with move him into the sun, so trying to do something active to save this young man, and then actually, like you said, it moves into the philosophical. That doesn't work, action isn't working. You have to think, and calling upon people to think about what to do, and from there they can stop war if they start to consider what they're actually doing.
I totally agree with you, Emma, when you were commenting on that point. What I like about this poem is it's very, very short, but it's very compact as well. And it's also suggests that our life is short as well, and about using our lives that we have to the best of our ability, making sure that we make the right choices. And maybe Wilfred Owen is suggesting, did the soldiers that joined up in the First World War make the right choices? Because in the end, it was futile in fighting a battle that no one was going to win. The only people that were going to lose were these young men who lost their lives. And it's very emotive.
For me, the ideas behind this poem is that, we really need to question ourselves. It's not just about going to war, it's about the whole idea of, are we making the right choices in life to make life have a point? Why have we been given this great gift of life if we're going to waste it through things like war? And I think that not only does it emphasise the fact that war is completely pointless and we need to stop that, but we also need to think about all of our decisions in life and make sure that we're actually sort of living the best lives that we can.
I think it's interesting if we think about, I think I totally agree with you, Jen, its relevance now is still very important, and we still read this and can relate it to current events. I think as well it's important to remember that actually when Wilfred Owen was writing, his ideas were not popular. This was combating the propaganda at the time. He had lived, he had experienced war, the First World War, in the war, and it's interesting that now it's still so relevant, and to me it's strange that anybody now would read that and agree with it, and yet we still have all of these conflict still continues.
I like this poem because it highlights the futility of war, and also it emphasises human nature and how people behave and how people will destroy goodness in society, in the sense that these young men didn't reach their full potential because unfortunately they made the wrong choices. If they had the choice again to decide whether to go to war, not knowing what Wilfred Owen is portraying in this poem. You'd think that maybe they'd think again.
That's almost what he's trying to say,
Yeah.
isn't it, to the young man as well as society, because I mean, if you didn't sign up, you would have been seen as a coward.
Yeah.
And he's trying to show, like you said, the reality of war.
What would we compare this to?
Personally, Futility, I would link it with Fallen Leaves, because they're both an elegy to the young men that died in the First World War. It's also associated with, if you look at in Fallen Leaves, in one of the lines it says, "For thinking of the gallant multitude," but it suggests the multitude of men that died in the First World War, and again links to the idea of being the powerlessness of war and how many men died and lost their lives for something at the time they believed in, but the reality of war may become disillusioned with war possibly, and that's how Wilfred Owen feels in his poem Futility.
And for me, I'd be looking at comparing it to Bayonet Charge. A couple of points of comparison. I think I'd be looking at the fact that they both deal with the reality of war, in slightly different ways, of course, because Bayonet Charge is about the immediate battle, and Futility is obviously about the after effects, the effects of the trenches. But I do think their whole point is they want to show us the reality and how damaging it is. The other point of comparison which is linked to that is, I think they both deal with the idea of patriotism blinding young men to reality. So that's why they want to show the reality of war, because of this idea of patriotism and the propaganda at the time encouraging young men to go to war and die for their country.